Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is April 4th, 4/4/24, and you are listening, watching the Daily AI Show Live. And today we're talking about which movies got AI right, or at least what we think is right. Of course, some of these movies may prove to be right going forward. We really don't know, but based on what we do know about AI in 2024 and where we think it's going, what are some of the movies that seem to get it close to right? And there's a lot to pick from here. I am definitely going to be leaning on the expertise of the co-hosts, which are today Jyunmi, Beth, Andy, and I'm Brian. We'll see if anybody else pops in as well. But I will be the first to say I'm not the expert here. I certainly like a good movie, a good sci-fi movie, but I would never ever put myself in any expert seat on it. So with that, I think what I'm going to do is pass it over to you, Jimmy, to kind of kick these things off. And I definitely have a couple movies and ideas, but and here we got Karl here as well. Welcome, Karl. We're just getting going. So I would just pass it up to Jimmy and to kick things off here as we talk about the AI movies that got it right potentially.
Sure. Okay. So I think it's important that we give a quick little overview of how AI has been portrayed in movies, right? And cinema's role in our perception of AI. All right. So AI or technology in general has been in movies since like the beginning. And we're talking since like Metropolis, which is that Fritz movie from like 1927, right? Where the evil mad scientist actually takes the main character and puts her into a cyborg body and controls uses her to do various things in the film. So this concept of technology, AI, and that general idea has been in films since the beginning, and so when we take a look at how AI is portrayed, we have entire genres where AI is prominent, right? And those genres break out into science fiction in general, and then other subgenres like cyberpunk and even thriller and horror movies, or even animated and family movies. And so some of those examples here, I'll go ahead and show my screen here. And let's see here. There we go. All right. And so like here's Metropolis, like I was talking about. So now we're talking about what entire genres have been created to talk about AI, right? And I said science fiction, horror, cyberpunk. So all of those genres have AI as an aspect, right? And I think if we take a look at some of the examples, we can categorize even further those types of portrayals, right? Whether they be benevolent or rogue, or is it a question of our identity? Because science fiction in general has gives us an opportunity to examine certain aspects of humanity and our relation to our own humanity, and those larger narratives, storytelling like man versus machine and man versus nature and those kinds of things. And so I wanted to point out some of these films. So we have modern films. A great example of benevolent AI is the movie Her, which is more of an exploration between human intimacy and what does it mean, what does love mean, and things like that. But the basis of the story is a man falls in love with his personal AI romantically. And funny enough, when we see today, we see things like character AI, and we see things that are companion AIs that are being created to offer or fill this role of companionship for us. So in a modern sense, Her is probably a really good example of that aspect of AI in the modern day. right?
Yeah, before you move on from that one, I think that one, if I remember right, uh, um, the AI Samantha, I think it's Sam or Samantha or something like that, becomes self-aware, gains knowledge on it, and obviously that's sort of pushing into the far-reaching features. We're not really sure when those things like an AGI might come around. If we're years or decades away from that, we're really not sure. But like you said, I think it's really interesting that this will keep coming up. I mean, not to jump the gun. I mean, you may talk about this movie too, but like Megan, different type of movie totally. But the idea of getting really comfortable with technology and having a personal relationship with it is something we definitely are seeing everywhere. So it really is kind of poignant. And although it might be, fiction, I think it just shows that people could become really, 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 really attached to something that's not, in fact, AI, and humanizing it with which actually Ethan Mollick talks a lot about in his book that we were talking about yesterday. Okay, so I just wanted to mention.
And I just want to jump in and say, I think one of the themes that I saw in prepping for the show is that AI movies and AI entertainment kind of get the human right more than the AI right. So how are humans going to interact with the AI? The movies are pretty good at depicting that. And the AI, there are some things that we expected imaginationally when people were making these movies that haven't come to pass. But Jyunmi, keep us on the path here.
Well, as you can see, I brought up the Terminator, which is, I think, a fine example of showing that how AI is portrayed in cinema isn't genre specific, right? If you take a look at a Terminator movie, obviously you're going to think, oh yeah, it's got about robots and, killer robots and stuff like that. But it's less a sci-fi movie and more a horror movie. Switch out the Terminator, the killer robot, with a killer, a slasher, like Jason Voorhees or, Michael Myers. It's the same thing. It's you're being chased down by a relentless, near supernatural type of monster trying to kill you. So I just wanted to highlight that AI and depiction of AI in cinema isn't genre specific. So you don't have to look at just sci-fi movies. You can look at other movies that have that element in it, right? Just like if we were to talk about, happy AI, right? Like WALL-E, right? WALL-E represents a certain level of AI where they are autonomous and self-aware. And things like you were talking about, Brian, is a lot of AI is portrayed at the point in which they are essentially human. They are a self-aware intelligence, right? We are not near that, I don't think. And we may be getting close to it over time, but for the most part, I would say when it comes down to how AI is represented in most films, and specifically the points that filmmakers are trying to make with their film is at the point where AI becomes essentially becomes human, becomes self-aware, right? And so a lot of those films are about that. So even for example, Blade Runner. The entire film, while a beautiful dark noir, futuristic cyberpunk tale, is about this character figuring out whether these replicants are human or not. And the fact that that question comes into play. And does it matter? And should they, and once you've reached that point, how would you treat them? And so that I think is the focus of most AI movies. Now,
wait 1 second. Could I just throw another theme, I think, between WALL-E and Blade Runner, which I didn't think I'd be doing. But so in WALL-E, it's a task built robot that has more than just the capabilities of a toaster, right? It's task driven. WALL-E has a job, but he also has consciousness. We'll say to a certain extent, we can agree it's great. And although I haven't seen Blade Runner in many, many years, like with the replicants, aren't the robots like enslaved in part of it. And what I think is interesting here is in the future, as we go on and these AI task driven type robots exist, and if they should move towards AGI, wherever that might be, and they seem to have a consciousness, what happens there? Is it more like a Blade Runner where we're totally okay with taking a robot that can say ow, whether it means it or was programmed to say it or not? And we're okay with them having task driven and setting up in a, Amazon warehouse doing 24/7 work.
Mm-hmm. Well, that
Is
is
it
one of
Wally,
those,
or is it
existential questions. Exactly. And that's why one of the reasons I love sci-fi in general is it's a form, just like animation allows you to explore movement and ideas that can't easily be done in live action. Science fiction allows you to explore those existential questions, right? What is reality? What does it mean to be human? If we come up against something or have created something that is like us, how are we going to treat it? And it's an examination of who you are and who we are as people. So it's much larger concepts.
And I'm going to break in right here. This was not when I expected to do this, but I will announce that we have a daily AI show spinoff coming, which is the sci-fi AI show to explore exactly what Jyunmi is talking about. There's a splash page right now that'll have more information if you go to scifaishow.com. Because it's so fascinating. It's so deep. There's so much to be able to do. And also we're living science fiction right now. What used to be science fiction is science fact.
Yeah. So I think this is really, before we move on, because it is really exciting. I'm super excited. You guys have been talking about this a little bit before, off camera, about what you guys are going to do. So, Jyunmi and Beth, do you just want to give a little bit more, explanation of, you sort of talked about what you want to cover on the show, but how often do you think you'll be doing the show? When do you feel like maybe the first episode will drop for our audience so they can kind of go check it out and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Jyunmi.
I realize you guys are putting it together, but best guess.
Right. So right now we're planning on a bi-monthly, or I guess you could call it also bi-week, twice a month release schedule.
Yeah.
And depending on how many resources and how popular it is and things like that, we can
so if you love it, tell your friends.
Yeah, if you love the idea, let us know and we'll make sure to make more. But since it's not a live show, we are producing the show and putting it together, and that'll be released. The plan is to be released twice a month.
Awesome. And it'll be part essay, part like conversation, like we're doing right now, which could be considered a visual essay, and part interview. We'll be interviewing people who have a real connection to sci-fi about their experience with AI, and we'll be interviewing AI experts and AI, front leaners in the AI community who have an affinity for sci-fi. And if you're both, man, we'll totally interview you. Reach out.
Yeah.
And from Jen, I'm just going to bring up Jen's comment because she said 2 Jens turning in this morning from Halifax. Hey, y'all, who brought the popcorn? So, Jen, now you have 4 reasons to bring the popcorn with Beth and Jyunmi, which we're all really excited about. So, all right, keep going, Jyunmi. What else you got?
Okay, so just to wrap up the way that AI is categorized, like I've talked about benevolent AI. And then there's the rogue AI, which I think we see a lot of examples of. That's things like iRobot, where AI has been integrated into mass society and usage, and then suddenly the AI are going rogue. Another possible rogue AI movie is Ex Machina, though I think this is a little more cerebral than actually a rogue AI, but there are those elements there. And then the concept of AI and identity. And there is there's a few examples of this, but I think this one's really on the nose. The Spielberg movie Artificial Intelligence, which is just an exploration of AI, identity, sense of self, what am I? What's my purpose? All of those kinds of questions, but told from the point of view of an AI, right? So this explores that a little bit. Now, personally, I think I didn't need the last 30 minutes of the movie, but I will leave my critique there.
I mean, I don't remember that one. I don't remember that one. I know I watched it, but I'm just looking at the date there, summer of 2001. And what struck me there is that Spielberg also did Minority Report the next year. I didn't realize they were so close to each other.
Yeah. I think in those few years there was an uptick. If you were talking about a 10-year period between, I'd say 97, to 2007, there's a lot of AI and sci-fi and technology stuff. And that might have had to do with, concepts like the Y2K bug. And,
I was going to say,
there was a few worldwide stresses in that era and things like that. Now I want to talk about AI as a mirror to humanity. And we have not seen anything. I have not seen anything that hasn't explored or has explored this more than, and this is not necessarily a movie, but they did make movies, was Star Trek: The Next Generation. Right. And the character of Data.
What is this? I've never heard of it. Which one?
Star Trek: The Next Generation. He's joking.
That's okay, Brian. They can come for you.
Is this an offshoot of Star Wars? I'm not sure.
Right. It's led by a Doctor Who. Right. Yeah. So the character of Data is it explores that whole mirror to humanity, where Data is learning and strives to become human, and just the exploration of that whole process, right? And they've had 7 seasons and like 3 movies or 4 movies to actually explore that concept. So they did a pretty good job, I think. Now, there's another aspect of Star Trek, which this is where I'll start with these are the ones that get it right, and these are the ones that are closest. Another aspect of Star Trek is the computer, voiced by Majel Barrett, who was from the original series, and married Gene Roddenberry for a time. And so the computer in Star Trek, if you pay close attention, it has the ability to do all the things that we are seeing emerge now, right? The way they program in Star Trek is to simply ask the computer, hey, I want to work in this field, or I want to produce this kind of thing. I need to put in elements to do that. Please create a subroutine that accomplishes this goal. What's that? That's Devon. That's agent coding from AI today. That's exactly what that is. We're saying, do this task. It needs to accomplish this goal, and put that together for me. And then they go in, and the character goes in, and they verify, oh yeah, okay, we'll experiment, we run simulations and those kinds of things. It's like, oh, it works. Okay, let's move on, right? So
hey Jyunmi. So when you've shown like Star Trek, her AI, and then you mentioned the humanity behind it. What's fascinating to me is if you look over the decades and the movies that portray AI, I think I'm just looking in the 1950s, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Then you've got, I think, Star Wars, Star Trek, the motion picture. Then you do have Star Wars 2, right? Yeah. And Star Trek, before Data, right? Star Trek and Star Wars, those movies portrayed AI more as like an accompaniment or a tool for humans rather than something that is more anthropomorphized as part of the I guess, like, it's like another actor. It's just another character in the show, right? So then you start going into, but what I find is through the decades that humans' concept of AI really changes as you go through, and as people think what could be versus what it isn't. A lot of it is anthropomorphized. Like, we think about it as this kind of as existential human, even things like Johnny Mnemonic. Then you've gone things like virtuosity. And then you've got it either playing a central role or playing a auxiliary role. I guess the central role, the Matrix. An auxiliary role would be something like, I don't know, would be I don't know, you could say Iron Man, like, because you have Jarvis, right?
And things like that. Yeah.
You have Jarvis. And then like even like things like Interstellar. Because you don't think of it, you kind of think of it as there's AI pieces in it. So it's just fascinating. But the one thing that's constant is that we always think of it as like it's evolved as a human. It's always been thought of as a human, but it's just interesting over the decades. It's becoming more and more and more and more human since like the 1950s to 2023. And I think the most, was it Rebel Moon, you would argue, has AI included into it? And
most definitely. Yeah. One of the major ensemble is an AI. Yeah.
And then like Mission Impossible, I'm just looking here, 2025, there's going to be an AI component in there. It's just fascinating over the decades what humans think of AI. And it's, in the end, AI to a human, its evolution is it just becoming more human. And I'm sure there's some sort of theoretical paper that someone could write about how humans thought it was a robot, but then it became human and it's becoming even more human. And that's how humans view it. And that has implications to what AI people think of AI today. And it isn't ChatGPT, right? It's
right. Here's I think a twist on that, if not a pushback. I agree. I think humans naturally anthropomorphize most everything that they interact with because we are at our base, we are social creatures. We interact with the world by looking at it, touching it, tasting it, speaking to it, and things like that. That's why every car person has a nickname for their car that they really, really love, right? And along those lines. But I'm going to make the argument that the very concept of ChatGPT is anthropomorphy. I don't know. My words are failing me. Right. Because a large language model, the concept of a large language model is to be able to communicate and interpret human language, human thought, writing, all of that kind of thing, right? So that we as a collective can interact with it and produce some sort of task or goal or anything like that. That is a step towards humanizing the AI. Mm-hmm. Because because of humans need the ability. It's easier for us to speak and communicate and interact with the AI if it can think and understand like us. Instead of changing our behaviors and our thinking process, we're creating things that will naturally work better with us. That's why I think that's why you see so many humanoid robots and things like that, is to cross that uncanny valley for people to be more comfortable. Would you be more comfortable if you're going to have an artificial intelligence with a robotic body for your house, for your home? Would you be more comfortable with, over time, with something that you can communicate? You can see their emotions on their faces. You can see their their reactions in their body language, and they can they can use those clues to explain to you what they how they're interpreting your request.
Although
Do you want a Roomba?
that's where that's where the opportunity is not to do that, because like a Roomba, if you have AI connected to it and it can, I think there's components of it, is that, do you really need to see the emotion, or do you need to just, hey, it's supposed to clean your floors, vacuum your floors, right? So
Right.
I think there's opportunity to not anthropomorphize in just, hey, these are the tasks that AI could do
Right.
for you in the shape and the form of the best form function to complete that task, rather than we need an Optimus robot that is super slow, that looks like a human, has a face of a human, and it's like, but
And uses a vacuum,
identifying the danger zone, right? Where do we want to diverge the path so we don't run into what all of our art has been telling us for the last 50 years or 60 years? Oh, this is the danger zone. If you try and make them more and more human and they become human, then you got problems. Hopefully you've been nice, so you can coexist, or it's Terminator time.
It's also like, it is our own story, right? Like, that's sort of what we do with movies anyway, is we build a mirror for ourselves. So it isn't that humans aren't also going through and saying, who am I? What am I? What do I think? What do I mean? What's my purpose? Right. So when we look at AI, or like, is it okay to ask other humans to do things that we think are horrible? Right? Like that.
Exactly.
That is all the stuff.
If you would feel bad about asking your robot because it's a little too human to do a task, would you ask another human to do it? That's a fantastic point.
Right. I want my robot to connect to my Alexa and tell me where the other Apple Pencil is. Right? Like, that's helpful. I don't need you to have a face. I don't need you to have emotions about it, but you're going to find it more than I am.
I do want to bring this up real quick, though, just because this is, I think, worth mentioning as far as AI. It also is a race to see which nation, society, cultural group builds these, because just as I'm preparing to go over to Europe into Paris, my wife has been watching a lot of YouTube videos about social customs and norms and stuff like that. It would be odd for somebody in Paris, the way I understand it, for a Parisian they'll say bonjour because that's polite, but it would be odd to strike up any sort of overly friendly American conversation the way we might say, how's your day? How's the weather? These kind of things. This is normal American type of banter back and forth with complete strangers. But over and over and over again, you hear that when people come over to the United States, they go, that's weird. It's not that we're impolite or Germans are impolite. We would never think to do that on the street. That's odd to us, So I think a lot of this AI too, we talk about humanizing robots and stuff, but also who's doing the humanizing and by what standards, because that's not across the world. That's not even close. You would have AI robots doing things and smiling or whatever. Or, I always say my love language is sarcasm because that's the way I grew up in New York. And so I want a robot that's sarcastic. I want the Roomba that says $1 million idea, Andy. Just write this down. We got a lot of $1 million ideas up there. I want the Roomba that I say, hey, could you go clean the upstairs? And it goes, oh, we're there again, huh? All right, I'll go do it. I go, nice one, Roomba. Nice one. Yeah, but you still need to go do it.
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts. I'd like to inject here. One is, and this is following on what I think is a really central theme that Jyunmi stated, which is once you perceive the AI to have some kind of awareness, or you're imputing some kind of awareness and reality to that brain that's there, which is, architecturally mimicking your own brain. How do you treat that? Like, what are you going to do to that? Well, my first point is, it's a good thing that all this technology is not edible, because there's profound evidence in human history that, even though we have intelligent companions, horses, dogs, etc., we eat them, right? When necessary, we eat them. well, we're not going to eat the AI. Well, the AI may provide us with nutrition one day, but I'll see about that. But now I wanted to give you a thought experiment. What happens in the way that the next generations treat AI if AI becomes an intelligent tutor to your children that has a personality that you approved and all that, but they grow up with the understanding that there's this supremely intelligent, empathetic, and helpful, supportive thing that has embodiment in their space. Like it's going to have a little character and it's going to make expressions. You'll be able to recognize those. How will humans who have been raised with AI treat AI? And how can we build AI in such a way that there's a benevolent arrangement between them? So the other point I wanted to make quickly goes all the way back to 1968 and 2001: Space Odyssey. HAL 9000, goes rogue. Well, it didn't really go rogue. What happened was something that we can see potentially happening with AI today, and that was there was a hidden program that was delivered by the owners of the expedition, right? That basically poisoned the positive relationship that the crew had with the AI. And so this is possible today. You can poison an AI, and there are nefarious actors out there who will attempt to do that. And we have to figure out, just in terms of AI ethics, how do we treat an AI that, through no fault of its own, while it has a personality and we have all these benefits from it, it has a poisoned constitutional element down there, something that's driving it beyond what your instructions are.
Yeah.
I just want to respond to that, Andy. And I think it goes back to the definition of when you build an AI, if you have a Roomba, I can yell, scream, kick at that Roomba, and it doesn't even matter. If you have an Alexa, I've sworn at my Alexa because it sucks when you ask it a whole bunch of stuff. And it won't matter because it's just a screen and you're like, you got to be kidding me. But if you build a humanoid type robot, there's going to be a lot of people who we have attachments to. I remember Brian talked about how, what are people going to put that robot through a lot of paces because you're going to make it clean, cook, like all the things that we don't want to do, take up the trash, take up the recycling, cut your lawn, like do all the things and get mad at it for doing something, kick it, punch it. You're going to see it. It's just going to happen. But if it's going to be funny, if you're kicking a Roomba down the stairs because you're like, look at that guy. But it's not going to be, for a lot of people, it's going to be a little bit different if you're kicking your humanoid robot. So even the form factor itself, that anthropomorphization of the AI is dependent highly on what you've shaped and created. And that, just one more thing, was a couple of days ago, I forgot, Hume or whatever the company that had the emotional response to it.
No.
Put that emotional response to your Roomba. Roomba, you didn't clean this part. Why do you keep falling down the stairs? You're so stupid. And imagine it responds to you in an emotional tone. I feel very hurt. And you're like,
Yeah.
Oh. And it's funny.
I didn't mean to upset you. Yeah.
But you stomp it, right? You're like, you're so stupid. And then but if I see a TikTok on that, some of us would laugh, but it's just a Roomba. But if you do that to a humanoid and it's actually emoting, hey, please don't hurt me, takes a whole new concept. So that is a fascinating, like where that is going to go. I think also depends on the form factor and what it kind of looks like. If it's made off of something that's real or made off of just a weird inanimate object that is designed to do a specific task.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jimmy, I know we kind of got off topic, or not off topic, excuse me. We got off track with what you were showing, and I know what you were sharing your screen. We don't have a whole lot of time here left, but if we just kind of go back here,
so I'll quickly go through this. So if anybody wants to get an idea of near versions of how the technology is being created or evolving, Minority Report has a lot of elements that we are seeing the beginning of. Automated transit. We're talking, and unfortunately, automated ads and marketing in front of our faces through our ocular implants. We're talking about video screens that make up a cereal box. And we're talking about drones and monitoring of the masses.
And just general privacy too.
Yeah, exactly.
Loss of privacy.
Another one, a little more lighter, but still impactful, is Ready Player One. This talks about virtual worlds and spatial computing, VR, AR, things like that, and how we would interact as a global community. Tron, sort of like Ready Player One, where it's virtual worlds, like simulated worlds and things like that. One of my favorites, and I think a sleeper for most people, is Strange Days. So Strange Days, while it's actually a political thriller, it's a the future tech in it is essentially something you'll hear in cyberpunk called brain dancing. And that is a device that can attach to you that can give you the experiences of other people through their POV. So a person can do some skydiving, record that with their device, send you the file, and now you can experience as them the skydiving. So lots of different applications, screws with your questions about what is real versus not real. And if you have everyone else's experiences, how much is you, how much is them, those kinds of things. And then finally, the movie that Karl and I have been talking about off and on, Johnny Mnemonic. So Johnny Mnemonic is a near future tale about Johnny, who is a digital courier, where he's put a space in his brain to store digital files like a neural link and things like that. And it's his job to take this very sensitive information from point A to B. We also see new things like how everyone's connected to the internet as a virtual world. We see how people are being affected by so much technology and EM radiation around them, all so much that it affects their biology, and lots of these other, dark future dystopian concepts that we can see the beginning of now, with a big separation, in class and things like that. So that's a quick overview. If you watch anything, I'd say, watch a handful of those. I'd say Strange Days and Johnny Mnemonic to give you a heads up on cyberpunk. And of course, if you watch the classics, definitely take advantage of Blade Runner.
And the length of this show is why we're spinning off. So we are at scifaishow.com. And there will be stuff dropping on that site, giving you more information about what's coming up.
And just to be very clear with everybody, I know I say spin off too, but that also makes it sound like you may be leaving here. So you guys are staying with us everywhere. Everything stays the same as far as the Daily AI Show. This is just us sort of making our umbrella a little bit bigger, just like we do with our interview series as well. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, tomorrow is Friday, so that means we're going to be doing our what did we just say? What did we just talk about? So we might talk a little bit about today and things we didn't get to, or we might talk about topics that came up over the last 2 weeks of conversations. It's always a fun show to see what everybody comes back with, what's still in everybody's brain. I think I still am deep into Ethan Malick's book. So that's where my brain has been the last couple of days. But we'll talk all about that tomorrow. And of course, we'll have a bunch of shows coming up next week with new topics. That's it for today, guys. Thank you, Jyunmi, and everybody that did all the work for this show. It was fantastic. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Gotta find my screens here. Here we go. Bye.
Aloha.